In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the eclipse coming up. I have two articles actually to look at. This first one is about the eclipse. 7 years ago, I was able to see the total eclipse, and the coolest part, in my opinion, was seeing the shadows. You know how the leaves on trees act as pinhole cameras, and they actually project images of the sun on the ground. That's why you see circles all over the place on the ground when sun is shining through trees just right. And so watching those shadows change and become the crescent moons, that was really cool. That is one of the cooler parts of being able to witness a total solar eclipse. Of course, you can see that too if it doesn't go all the way to totality. And then the second cool part was the way that it got dark. It doesn't get black, and that's because there's a difference between sunlight and daylight. It doesn't go completely black, but it does turn into a really strange twilight kind of light, and it is an odd feeling. It's a very mysterious feeling to be in the presence of totality, for sure. And I'll just say this because I'm sure that a lot of people are going to be able to relate to this. It couldn't have just been a local thing. Right when totality happened, there was like a local airplane that flew by and left a giant chemtrail in front of it. I don't know what that was all about, but that was ridiculous and kind of soured the experience a little bit. Oh, great, we gotta have this chemtrail right over the totality. But I don't know what was up with that. You guys can let me know if it was like that for you. So, in my opinion, outer space is fake. It is a big deception. It's the price you need to pay in order to have a say on the world stage. You need to buy into the paradigm of the outer space thing. Otherwise, you're not even allowed to play the game. You can't be a science teacher at a university and be like, "No, I don't believe in outer space. That's a bunch of BS." You must submit to that thought process in order to proceed in their little game. And that's how they work. It's the same thing with evolution. You're not allowed to be a biologist and say that you don't believe in evolution and say that you believe in adaptation and that talking about a million years is a bunch of BS. That's not science. It doesn't come down to the scientific method. Who can travel to a distant star and confirm that all of these fantasies are reality? Or we just have to take their word for it that by looking at light in the sky that they can tell me exactly what's happening. And it all falls apart once you realize that most people, they don't want to be thought of as stupid, and that's why they submit to just accepting whatever the world throws at them, because they don't want to be thought of as a weirdo. Or because I'm just saying this because I know a lot of Christian people. I feel like they know that it's totally incompatible. I've seen them, at least in my, armchair psychological way, I see them either just show no interest. They'll just be like, "Oh, I'm just not interested in that outer spacey stuff." And I think that that's part their cognitive dissonance, that they realize that stuff it's not compatible with Christianity. Now, Jesus is enough. Jesus is sufficient. There will be some people that are saved and are duped by that stuff, but I think that it's obvious that all of those lies are to try to cast doubt on God and on what the Bible says is reality. And I think that it's very clear, but you need to reject the world, but the Bible tells us to reject the world. And so, I mean, it's easy for me because that's how I came to Christianity, through all of this stuff, learning about flat earth, learning about all the Satanists in control of course, God is in full control, but here on earth, who has power here on earth? The prince of the power of the air is Satan, and his little minions are running around on earth, scrambling and trying to grab earthly power. That's their riches. Whatever their earthly power, you know how evil people live cushy lives and don't necessarily suffer for it here? Well, God is just, and judgment will come on all, and that's why those people get away with that stuff, because they're not really getting away with it. They will be punished. Okay, if you're in the path of totality for April 8th, total solar eclipse, this is coming up really soon. I don't really know how much I want to say about this other than the outer space deception. They don't have proof for any of this stuff. You would have to believe their stories. All they got are stories, and it's not science. Science, the scientific method, are things that we can test and verify. Who's going to be able to verify about something that happened a million years ago? I could make all sorts of random claims about things that happened a million years ago, but who's going to verify that? And yet these people will tell you that it's like fact. These things that happened a million years ago are fact to them. Or distances that are a bajillion miles. Who got out the tape measure to confirm that the math isn't just shooting out random numbers? And most of their math anyways is all reverse engineered. They start with the answer that they want, and then they fudge the numbers backwards to make it, prove. Who in school did measurements that proved that the sun is a cajillion miles away, or the moon is so far away, but then they're the exact same size? What? And it's crisp. The image of the moon is crisp. When you move objects farther and farther and farther away, it gets fuzzier and fuzzier. But the image of the moon is so crisp. So apparently, I'm just saying whatever I want to in this video, and I mean, this is an article about there might be explosions on the sun. The sun is not what they say it is, and sunspots are kind of an interesting. I had a friend back in the day who had a P900 camera, and he bought the solar lens, the filters for looking at the sun. It's really interesting. The sun does cartwheels. It spins like a wheel, like. The moon and the sun are both disks, and they both rotate like a wheel through the sky. It's interesting. You know the song about the wheel in the sky keep on turning? Yeah. See, this CGI thing is not what the sun looks like at all in reality. There's people that their entire livelihood is to sit there at a computer and make these fake ball Earth images over and over and over to make people think that they live in this ball Earth reality. How many fake images are we shoved in our face, whether we want to see it or not? How many obvious fake CGI ball spinny images or images like this? How many get shoved in our face every single day? And then how often do people actually get an optical telescope and look at the things in the heaven? It's a very, very, very common occurrence. When people first look through a telescope at the heavens, they get underwhelmed. They go, wait, what? That's Mars? That fuzzy thing is Mars? Because they're expecting the CGI bullshit. And when people are faced with reality, they're often underwhelmed because they've been programmed to think that it's CGI. So this article goes on and on and on. I don't know that there's anything in particular I want to talk about. This next article is actually more interesting. Move over solar eclipse. Scientists predict a once-in-a-lifetime nova explosion in the coming months. And I think that it's stuff like this that makes it really obvious that the deception is the sandbox itself that the people play in. That scientists out there, they really can study things and observe things and all that and collect data. They can do that. But they're only allowed to draw conclusions in the incorrect deception. If they're allowed to take data on light in the sky, but their conclusions must conform to Spaceballs stuff. It has to. Otherwise, you're not allowed to publish. Who would allow that to be published? And that's not science. Anybody should be able to have any sort of theory about anything. But notice that the system is constructed in such a way that you're not allowed to have outside thought. Once they have decided on a paradigm, that's it. You're not allowed to have any opinion outside of that. And see, this kind of stuff, it doesn't make any sense to me in terms of NASA Spaceball land. But under biblical cosmology, a lot of this stuff makes sense. So this almost reminds me of how when Jesus was born, a really bright star came out when Jesus was born. So this, I'll just try a binary star system. Who knows? Who knows what's really going on in this stuff? but there's water up there. That I'm certain of. And God did make the luminaries. Interesting word. Luminaries, the Illuminati, the illuminated individuals probably knew the truth about the luminaries, and they bullshit everybody else. But it's mysterious. A lot of this stuff is mysterious. I think a lot of times the answer is we still don't know. I mean, scientists still don't understand sleep. So it's just a bold-faced lie when they tell you that they can tell you exactly what's going on, allegedly a cajillion miles away and 500 bajillion years in the past, but we still don't know what sleep is. And I think that the reality of the heavens is that they understand that they follow cycles, that they have the formula somewhere. I mean, didn't the ancient Mayans and stuff, they had cultures in times past that they'll tell us are wretched and had no technology. They had this stuff figured out, and they follow cycles. It has nothing to do with orbital mechanics. The three-body problem is a problem. It's actually basically impossible to be able to compute complicated systems of, if what they told us was true about Spaceballs and it all being due to gravity bending space-time, and this stuff has computational complexities that are just way beyond even what we do today, supercomputers and stuff. But they'll tell you that NASA in the 60s was slingshotting things here and there and around this. It is just bold-faced lies. I mean, insert the Jim Carrey clip of how it's just fishtails, and I can't believe the people bought it. So, 3,000 light years from Earth. Prove it. Prove it. How do you prove it? This is where they just start making all this nonsense up about red shifting and blah, blah, blah. Can you really look at a light in the sky and tell people exactly what's happening there because you've looked at that light? I'm very skeptical. Take us there, and not just with CGI. But then it's so obvious. When you really, really look, they don't hide this stuff. NASA is about as campy as James Bond stuff. And the CGI is so ridiculously over the top, they literally put Pluto on Pluto. And that's where their mocking and their obviousness with the hoax, if you can stand up against the world, and they're so obvious with it. It's campy. And that's why I don't need to get in a spaceship and go to Pluto to know that they're lying about it. Because of course people will come out with the most ridiculous goalposts. Well, you're not NASA, so you can't say anything about it. Well, you haven't been on the ISS, so you can't talk about outer space. They'll always have these impossible goalposts. Nobody is going past the firmament. I actually had a really cool comment in my other video. Of course, I can't corroborate if this person is real or not, but they were saying that they worked with satellites, and it was kind of a hush-hush but understood thing of the field that satellites, and this is where I totally, it sounds believable that they would say this. Well, satellites aren't really in space. It's like at the edge of, and that's where they'll try to pretend like it's a sciencey thing. Well, our atmosphere actually extends out farther than you would, which, how does that make sense? It doesn't make sense that you can have really thin, weakly held on thing adjacent to a vacuum. And then things are also supposed to be spinning and flying at incredible speeds. It's nonsense. But I believed the comment. It made sense that if you did work with satellites, it might be a kind of unspoken truth that everybody kind of knows and is kind of told about, that, hey, it's not really in space. It's like at the edge of our atmosphere. That sounds very true to me, that they would go ahead and let people in on that little secret. And I also think they're all balloons too. Okay, so this article, I really am not even talking about the articles, but that's okay. I just want to talk about how outer space is fake. NASA experts have no idea when nova explosion. So here, what this is reminding me of is I just talked about this in another video about how if you just watch the sky enough, you'll notice weird, wacky stuff happening in the sky. Like, for instance, I've mentioned stars that will get very bright all of a sudden and then dim back down. And it's like, what? Is that supposed to be a supernova explosion? And this is where the sandbox comes into play. Any wacky, crazy thing happens in the sky, they get to come up with some nonsense spaceball answer for why it happens, and that's the game for them. That's what it's all about. So really cool stuff does happen in the sky. They really do take some data on what that's happening, but then it's the whole story that they tell you about it that's the BS. And so this is interesting that there's a star out there that has a very cyclical, it gets bright all of a sudden, and then it goes not bright. And most of the stuff like that, it doesn't make any sense with NASA Outer Space Ball Land, but then they just come up with an explanation. Well, this is just a unique star system where it follows a repetitive cycle. But how could that be? If the story that they tell us is that gas gets sucked off of a giant into the dwarf, and then eventually that's like it hits a critical mass and then it explodes, but it's not an explosion, it's that it gets brighter for a while and then it goes dim. It's clearly not like a boom, explosion, shockwave type of thing. It's a brightness thing. It gets brighter and then it goes back to not being bright. But then why would that follow such a consistent cycle? Because the star that's being fed off of should be running out of material. And especially when you start to play their stupid time game. If we're supposed to be in a place where things happen on millions and millions and millions of years, like, shouldn't this process have been going on for millions and millions of years? Like, why is it so cyclical? Shouldn't it be running out of material at a certain point? Or who knows? But that's the mind game, is that they have you thinking in this wrong box. Like, that's just totally BS that it's Spaceballs. Who knows what's really going on up there? But I don't think it. And the big balls of gas, hot air, gas, being full of big gas balls. It's because those are all, it means that they're talking nonsense. If somebody's full of hot air, it means that they're just full of nonsense. That's why I think they're all about that. And of course, the deception is obvious with trying to tell people that stars are all suns very far away. That's an obvious deception. You see this in the flat Earth community too, where they'll tell you, oh, there's land out there beyond the ice wall, other lands, and thousands of other lands, and millions of other places just like this out there. No, this is it. God made this place special for us, and we are stuck in here, and you ain't getting out until the firmament opens up and Jesus comes in the clouds of heaven. You can be raptured out, or you'll be stuck here and die on earth during the tribulation. And if you find Jesus and if you believe on him, then you can make it to heaven. So what else? I think I've really said everything that I want to say. But this reminded me of in Jesus' time, when Jesus came on earth. Of course, Jesus is still alive. But this reminds me of the sign in the heaven when Jesus was born, how a star, it could have been something like this, where a star that's normally not even visible to the naked eye, all of a sudden becomes very bright. And so it seems like a new star, but it was always there. It just becomes bright. So the TCRB star system normally has a magnitude of +10, which I guess it's a backward system, so that's really dim. But it will jump significantly to +2, I guess, at some point. +2 is similar brightness to Polaris, the North Star. And I just want to tell a story about something that happened. This was back a couple years ago. I was just looking up at the sky a lot, and out of nowhere, a comet, and it was huge. You could see it with the naked eye. That's how I figured it out. I was just out in the backyard one day, and I was like, that looks like a comet, and I could see it with my naked eye. And the news didn't really say anything about it. It was really hush-hush, but this should have been as big of a thing as Halley's Comet. And it was like a green-tinted comet, too, if I'm remembering correctly. And so there's all sorts of stuff happening in the sky, but you can't rely on them to tell you about it. And certainly don't let them think for you and give you theories about this stuff. I personally think that the biblical cosmology makes a lot of sense, and I am a firm believer in the firmament and Earth being flat and unmoving, and that there's foundations of Earth, and that it's more mysterious than even the NASA Spaceball stuff. A lot of people see a lot of appeal to the sci-fi. They want to believe in that stuff because it's like fun to them, the ideas of there being other worlds and all that. To me, it's much more interesting the biblical truths, and that Earth actually has foundations. How far down do they go? Do they ever stop? Is it infinitely down? Those are interesting questions. And the waters, how far out the waters? It seems like it'd be an infinite plane of water from just my guess. And how far out do the stars go? And just interesting things that will be answered in the end. So hope you enjoyed the video. God bless everyone.